Hey, hi. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build Azure Pytest framework based test framework for Azure infrastructure testing and use it with using Azure DevOps. So here I'm going to show you as a developer how we can use the Visual Studio Code for developing our infrastructure as a code and also build the Pytest framework here, and then we're going to use the Azure pipelines to do the deployment so that we deploy the Azure policies on the Azure subscriptions now. And as a part of the testing requirement of that particular policy, we're going to elevate the PyTest framework to build the required test framework for Azure infrastructure. So here I'm going to walk you through how we can customize this PyTest framework so that we can build the required custom the test frameworks for Azure infrastructure. Now, let me take you to the my Azure DevOps where I'm going to show you this PyTest framework, which is used for Azure infrastructure testing. So I have already shown you how to deploy the Azure policy with using the Azure DevOps pipeline, and again managing the policy as code. Now this is the continuation of that video. So in this one we're gonna look at the PyTest frameworks. So this is my Azure DevOps repository, and currently I'm in the folder called governance policies. So in that one, you might have seen in the previous video only the JSON and the other files, but as part of the testing frameworks, we have introduced couple of folders and files. One is the Azure test executions, the other one is the Azure test cases, right? So Azure test cases is the folder which will carry the files ending with the name underscore tests.py file, and it contains only the Python functions which is acting as a test cases. Okay. Now and then we have init.py file, which is basically empty file, which will help the invocation of the Python here. So make sure that you keep your folder name equal to Azure test cases. Then keep a init file like this. Then frame your file name such as it will ending with underscore tests. So here I'm testing the AI policy. That's the reason I have kept it like this. And this is the the Python function that we have written for this particular test cases. I'm going to walk you through that in the from the VS Code for now from here from the Azure DevOps. Okay. So here we go to the Azure test execution. So this has the init again. So this is, as the name says, so this is the file which will do the execution of your test cases from the another Python file. So here this file carries a lot of Python library imports. It includes SDK libraries imported here, as you see, client secret credentials, resource management client, and then the custom test cases modules is also being imported. So this is the folder that is Azure test cases, the file name Azure AI policy underscore test. From that it is importing the function, right? And then we are also using the the resource model, that is deploy if not exist. I'm going to tell you the what is the implications or what is the the importance of deploy what if basically a model of the Python SDKs or Azure Python SDKs. So then again we are also using this one. So this is the code, right? And then so what I did is, for now I have cloned this repository in my VS Code. I'm going to continue the code walkthrough, and then we're going to see the demo here. So the same repository is cloned here. Now let me tell you the what is the changes I have did it. Okay, so for now, let me close these folders, that is Azure test cases and test executions. So here, this is the Azure DevOps pipeline uh, YAML file or pipeline definition. So this is very simple definition. It contains the the two stages. One is the develop plan, the other one is the develop apply. So develop plan is basically to run the Terraform apply plan, and the develop apply is to run the Terraform apply. So you are familiar with the first tasks up to apply in the apply stage. Let me expand the plan as well. So plan stage does not has the test cases because that is not the space where you actually do a infrastructure deployment, but only the develop apply is a space, is the basically stage where you're gonna deploy the resources, and once the resources are being deployed, that's where you're gonna invoke your test frameworks, or the test cases will be compiled to test your infrastructure. So that is where I'm going to continue from here. So here we have the I have added a couple of tasks underneath the this particular stage, that is develop apply, and we have a steps. So the couple of steps which steps that we have added here is use Python version at the rate 0. So this is basically, you see that the here we are actually installing the Python 3.11 because the Pytest is a Python test framework. So we need to have Python installed in the pipeline. And then we are going to the next step, next task, that is bash at the rate 3. It is just running the requirements.txt file. So here I'm keeping a file called requirements.txt file, which is the way how you actually deploy the required packages of the Python. So here I'm collecting all the packages of this particular pipeline, that is Pytest coverages. This is very important. I know the Python module, that is Pytest hyphen Azure pipeline. So this is the module I'm using here. And then we have a unit test hyphen XML reporting, which will report the Azure pipeline test cases compilation reports in the form of a report. Then we are using the further Azure Python SDKs module, that is management resource, management storage, and identity as well. So those modules are being kept in the requirement.txt file. Now we are doing those installation and packaging it here in this particular task, right? Remember that, so everything is connected with the working directory because I'm keeping it in a different directory called governance hyphen policy, which is an independent directory underneath the root. Then the next task is basically PyTest unit tests with coverages. Basically, this is the a task which actually compiles the PyTest cases that we have written in the folder, that is Azure test executions and test cases. So it is very simple. It is again, right? You see that it is using a command called Pytest because we have installed the Pytest framework. So Pytest command, it can be used here. So how are we using? By going to a particular folder called Azure test execution by using this absolute path, and then passing the certain parameters of JUnit XML. It is collecting in the form of a result, then the code coverage as well, and then the XML report will be outputted. So this is basically syntax to compile your test cases in the PyTest framework, right? And then we are passing a certain environmental variable because my file, that is the test execution file, is asking for certain input. So since this is a Python PyTest cases for Azure infrastructure testing, so we need to connect to the Azure and do a test cases. So that's the reason I'm using an SPN, and that SPN has the owner access on the Azure subscription. And the credentials I'm using here is the SPN client ID and the secret, the tenant ID, and the environment is just a customization. So this is what we have added as extra code, which will cover the test requirement of the Azure policies as policy as a code. Or you can use this framework for Azure infrastructure testing as well. Now, with that said, let me take you to the code walkthrough. Then we're gonna see the demo as well. So here, let me quickly walk you through this particular file here. Now we will see, the how to write the test execution files and test cases files. So test execution file, as the name annotates. So this is the file which will be run by the Pytest, the command in the pipeline. So in this Python file, you're gonna write like how you call your the test cases, which is written as a Python function definitions. Okay, so as I have walked already from the Azure DevOps web page, so here we are importing these many modules for your information. So then, as I said, we are having the environmental variable. So those environmental variable which is passed in the pipeline are being collected here as the variables, right? That is SPN client and SPN secret and tenant and environment. Now this is the something, the test cases related variables again. That is, I need a subscription, I need a allowed RG, I need a not allowed RG. So this is, so as you know, the here we are testing a policy that is which restrict an AI services. So to test that policies, I need certain test cases. The test cases again are dependent on a certain variables. So those variables are written here. Now let's go to the next one. That is here, since we are using the Azure test cases, so we need to create a client. So I'm creating a client here with using the SPN credentials. So that's the reason it is a client secret credentials. So a client gets created, and then here we are creating a resource management client with using the credentials above and the subscription ID, which is kept here as a environmental variables. Now we got a resource client. Now we are passing this resource client in the next test cases. So this is a syntax that you have to follow to compile your test cases with using Pytest. So here nothing but you are just writing another function which will do a compilation of those the functions. So there is a particular pattern here. If you see, so you see that the name of the test the functionality by calling the imported function, right? So we are importing those functions. So these are all the functions are nothing but what? So these are all the functions are written in the test Azure test cases files. So those functions are being imported above if you see here, right? So now we are calling that function, and trying to evaluate the Pytest results. So how are we evaluating the Pytest results? That is something like this. Make sure that the definition of this particular function is starting with test underscore, then give the function name that you have imported from the Azure test cases folder, right? So if I open this in the side by side thing, so currently we are looking at test underscore AI policy. So all the test cases files will end with underscore test. Remember that. Okay, so now this one, Azure check if AI service can be created in a allowed RG. So it's very simple, right? This is one a test case just to check whether it is AI service is getting allowed in a particular RG or not. And it is not allowing in a RG where it is not allowed. So something like that. Yeah. Okay, so that is the test we are doing right away, and using the function that is imported from the test, that is Azure AI policy test. So here we are actually collecting the result of that particular functions. I'm going to walk you through these functions before I go ahead from here. Now let me go circle back to the file, that is to the folder Azure test cases, and go to the file name called Azure underscore AI policy underscore test. So if you look at here, it is very simple Python definitions. It's simple Python function definitions. Okay. So here this is a function. That's the reason it is a definition. The name of this function is sounds like a test cases. If you read it, Azure check if AI service can be created in a allowed RG, which is sounds like a test cases. But it is a function name, and then we are passing the certain variables, that is deploy what if. So this is basically a Azure Python SDK function which will just do a compilation of a particular ARM template deployment, but it will not deploy. This is the special case of the test cases here. So to do a certain test cases in the Azure, we generally create a resource and delete the resources, which will unnecessary a cost. But rather, why don't you use deployment what if? So deployment what if is a parameter that you can use it in the ARM deployment, which will just mimic the deployment, but it will actually not create a resources in the Azure ARM. Okay, so that's the reason we are using this deployment what if. Then deployment what if properties, which is to extract the result. What happens if I try to do this? Then Azure output certain, Azure does certain output, and from that output we are extracting the properties which is needed for deciding whether the test case is passed or not. That's the reason. So here we are passing the resource client, resource group name, location, and the service name. So those are all being used here. Now let's go to the down the line. So this is the deployment name. As I said, we are doing a ARM template deployment here. So this is my template value here. So the template contains certain schema, convert, content version, resources. So here I'm creating an example resource because I'm testing, that is Azure check if AI service can be created in a allowed RG. So that is the reason we are building a template, Azure RM template, which will try to create a cognitive service account in the particular RG. So if it is allowed, then what if deployment will give a good result? If it is failing, then it will not give a good result. So based on that, we're gonna check whether the test case is passed or not. So first one is checking deploy what if property. So it is incremental. Then this is where we are calling the function called begin what if. So then we are collecting the result of the begin what if. So I'm going to share this path in the description. You can find it from there and try to use it, right? And if you need any kind of consultancies or paid project support, I'm ready to support here. Please do let me know, because this is a very valuable test framework that you can bring in for your organizations. So this one is the begin what if, resource group deployment and parameters. So here what we are doing is we are actually trying to compile the above template. So this is the deployment template property that is being used here. That is property, deployment name, and the RG in which. So this is the function. This is a piece of code which will is compiling the above ARM template to just to mimic if the what happens if I try to deploy that particular resource. So then in the result, so generally you might be knowing that when you try to create a resource, so under the hood Azure is creating an ARM template, and when you try to mimic it, that it will give you result whether it is allowed to create a resource or it is not allowed to create a resource. Something will be the result. So that is what it is been collected here. If you see that in the result, that is what if result status equal to failed, which means that your test case is failed. So if it is if it is something which is relevant, so we are returning true. So based on what we are returning, that is true or false, that is where being used in the another file, that is test policy file. So if you see here, we are calling that function and collecting the result. So we are checking the result and asserting it. So that is nothing but if result is true, then this test case is passed. So our test case name here is test if test Azure check. So basically our this is our basically this becomes our test case, that is check if AI service can be created in a allowed RG. The next test case is similarly, the next test case is check if AI services can be created in a not allowed RG. So, and the results are varies here. So the result is, of course, the result here is true for one, the false for another one. Okay, so with that said, so I'm gonna make some immaterial changes and try to commit it, and then we're gonna do a demo here. So I'm gonna make some immaterial changes in this particular script and try to mimic the complete development process. So we're gonna commit this particular changes now with a message saying like demo, and then I'm gonna commit it. Try to do a sync. Now once the sync is been done, you can go to the Azure DevOps repository now. So we're gonna switch to the Azure DevOps repository. We go to the pipeline. Now you have the repo. So this is the repo. We just made some changes here in the AI test policy here. So that is being synced now. Now time has come to go to the pipelines and try to run the pipelines. So let me run the pipelines on my main branch. So what is that I'm expecting is, I'm expecting that the Terraform should run as expected, because in the pipeline we have a Terraform plan and apply is being done. Post apply, I'm expecting the test framework to be invoked as expected, and it should compile all the test cases. In this case, we have only two test cases. So I'm expecting both the test cases to pass, and that should give us a report. And the report is nothing but a report within the Azure DevOps. Let's see, how does it happens. So currently, let's wait for these two stages to get complete. So currently, it is doing a plan. As I explained earlier in the plan, you don't have any test cases, because test cases is only needed after Terraform apply. So that's the reason here we don't have test cases. Let the plan go off, and then we directly jumping into the next one, that is basically apply. So in the apply, so if I open, so currently it is running the apply. Let's see, what does this apply talks about. So here you see that it is actually running, it is actually running those tasks that is mentioned in the stage, that is develop apply or Terraform apply. So it doing the init validate plan again, and then apply as well, right? And then only once the apply is completed, then only it will start the our test framework related steps. So let's wait for apply to get completed. So by the way, here there is no magic. So it's the same code which I have used for my previous video, that is Azure policy as a code with using Azure DevOps pipeline. So here our test case steps has been started. One is setting the Python. One is setting the Python 3.11. The other one is the install the basically the next step is basically install the pip requirement. Basically it install the the Python modules will be installed in this particular step. This is the step which is actually runs the Pytest unit test cases. Now this is how it will look like when the Pytest cases are being compiled in the Azure pipeline. So this compilation, not only just compiles the test cases, it will produce the result as well. So let's see what happens now, and then I'm going to show you from the console as well, like how does it whether the all test cases are being passed as expected or not. So for now, let's wait, because it is trying to compile all those test cases here. Remember that since we are deploying the ARM template, so that's the reason it is going to take some time, because you are dealing with the Azure infrastructure testing, so it is a lengthy test cases. So here you go. So if you see this one, it clearly says that it has said that there are two test cases, and both the test cases the both the Pytests are being successfully passed, and the result can be viewed. You see that published test runs are available here, which is nothing but it's a link within the Azure DevOps only. So for now, before I go to that particular path, I'm going to show you here something. So if you see here, this is actually this is how it actually runs the all Pytest cases. and produces the result. The result can be viewed by clicking on this particular link. When you click on this particular link, it will go to the test plans and it goes to the runs. And this is how the summary shows. The summary shows that there were two test cases and both the test cases were passed, right? And you can further dig down here by clicking into the test results. And here are the your two test cases, both are passed, right? So this is how you can elevate the Azure DevOps pipeline, for Azure DevOps pipeline for building your own test frameworks for Azure infrastructure with using open source Python testing framework, that is Pytest. Now let me show you whether our test cases, how our test cases gets passed. This is nothing but testing my the Azure policies, something which I have already done. So if I go to the Azure AI services and we try to create Azure AI services in the allowed RG, it should be allowed. If I am trying to create in not allowed RG, it should not allow. So that is the thing we are trying to do here. So this is the allowed RG. Let's see what happens. Now I go to the next and try to review. So when we do what if, right? So if I go back to the code, so here we saw that is deployment what if. So deployment what if is a module within the framework, so which will actually it will not deploy, but it will do something like this, which right now you see in my screen, right? It is just trying to compile it, but it will not deploy the resource. So that is a perfect thing needed for testing the Azure infrastructure. Now let's me go back and try to use the not allowed RG and see what it happens. I'm sure that it will gonna comply. So we go to the next and review. So it says that it's basically running the final validation, which is nothing but what if thing. Okay, so here we can expect that policy is blocking, and that's the reason our both test cases are being passed, because it has done these two manual test cases into automations and it has produced the result. All right, so with that note, I have shown you the things need to be shown in this video. Finally, thank you very much for watching my videos. A kind request, please do subscribe my channel. That would really encourage me a lot. With that note, thank you, thanks a lot, and see you in the next video.